After these last few days of practice, I hope you're feeling like you've got a pretty good handle on taking a percent and drawing it out on a 100 grid. Today, we're going to change it just a little bit. We are going to represent a percentage on a tape diagram, or another way of thinking about that is a picture using pieces of tape. So let's think about first what I mean by tape. You've probably seen tape like this in classrooms. Mrs. Toivola has a tape dispenser like this in her space. I use this kind of tape if I'm going to wrap a present for somebody in my family for their birthday or for another holiday. And then these things here are supposed to be pieces of tape that would have come off of either that dispenser or that dispenser. So it's kind of hard to draw them because they're clear pieces of tape, but what I'd like you to notice is the shape that they have. They're almost little rectangles. So when we draw tape diagrams, you're going to see little rectangles inside a longer piece. This is a screenshot of my iPad, and up here in the top right corner, I blew it up for you, so it's here. I see my iPad battery. I see the number 86%, and I also see this rectangle. It's got rounded edges, but it's trying to be a rectangle. And inside that rectangle, there's this white part. So I'm going to kind of cover it up here. I can see that this red part goes from one end, the left end, and stretches across and almost gets to the other end. I notice also that the number 86 is very close to the number 100%. And you probably know that if your iPad is all the way filled up, then that white part inside will grow. It'll grow so it goes all the way to the end, right? So this rectangle inside is pretty much what we're drawing in this lesson. So sometimes we'll have a white part go all the way across. Sometimes it'll be a little bit less. And then here's a couple more examples that I found on the internet from some guy named Tom. All right. So I can see the little charging symbol here. His device is telling him it needs to get charged. And I think it's because these two numbers here are less than 50%. And 50% is half of 100%. So if we look at this first rectangle, if I cut it in half, you can see that that green line is almost getting to it, right? So 47% gets you almost halfway, but now look at 18%. Oof, it's a very small amount of red. It is nowhere close to that halfway line. There's a big gap in between. And then there's 67%. 67% looks like it's a little bit more than half. And notice that there is no charging line there. All right. So again, what we are doing today is kind of like we're drawing our own iPad battery symbol to reflect the percentage that the iPad would be charged. So the directions say shade 40% of the tape diagram. The very first thing I need to do is I need to think 40% is the same thing as the fraction 40 100ths, or 40 on top of 100. Now, what this means right now is if I wanted to shade in 40%, I would need to cut this entire big bar here into 100 total little parts. Absolutely not. That's a waste of time. But they would be really small little parts. And after I cut them up, I would color in 40 of them, right? So instead, I'm going to make fewer parts. To do that, I need an equivalent fraction. I need to think, what can I divide 40 and 100 by? Or what can I count by? And then I would divide by that number. All right, so I could count by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Eventually I'm going to say 40 and 100. That seems, whoa. Sheesh, that was the wrong button. That seems like a giant waste of time to me, though. So I could count by a bigger number. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Absolutely. That'll work. I will say 40 and 100, but it's going to take forever. I could count by fives, But the number that a lot of kids see is they see that 40 ends in 0 and 100 ends in 0, so we could count by 10. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Come on, I'm so close. 100. All right. So because both of them are in the list, I could divide by 10 because that's what I was skip counting by. Then I would get the answer. 40 divided by 10 is 4. 100 divided by 10 is 10. So now I would take this entire bar and I would need to cut it into 10 parts, just like I did in the example before. So I'm going to cut it in half. Right? And then I would need each side to have 5 parts. But I'm also noticing that I missed a step. I should have written on the top 0% and on the other side 100%, or the whole thing. All right. So now I need to cut each side into 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I can zoom in and count by tens because that's what I counted by. 20, 30, 40, 50%, halfway. See if we did this right. 60%, 70%, 80%. 90%, yep, there's 100%. So if I wanted to color in 40%, I now need to look at the numerator of 4. I'm looking right here, everybody. I need to color in 4 of those parts, or all the way up to 40%. I have colored in 4 out of 10. That is 40%. All right. However, there was a different number that's actually bigger than 10 that we could have counted by. So let's very quickly look at that example. Shade 40% of the tape diagram. It starts exactly the same. 40% is the same as 40 100ths. And then I'm going to find a bigger number that I can divide by. Mrs. Toivola notices that yes, 40 and 100 both end in 0. But I'm also seeing that at the beginning of both numbers, here's a 4 and here's 10. Those are even numbers. So I should be able to divide by 20 or skip count by 20 and say 40 and 100. 20 plus 20 is 40, plus 20 is 60, plus 20 is 80, plus 20 is 100. So this is really great. I can now divide by 20, divide by 20, and I can just count across. It took 1, 2 of those to get to 40, so that's going to be 2, and then to get to 100 it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total, so it's 2/5. So what this means is now, for this example, I can still start with 0% and 100% on the ends. But now instead of taking the entire bar and cutting it into 10, because the denominator is 5, I can cut this whole bar into 5, and I'll do the best that I can. It's a little bit tricky. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, that's pretty good. So again, I counted by 20. Looking at those red numbers that I've highlighted blue, I counted by 20. So I'm going to take those and just write them down. 20, 40, 60, 80. Yep, and the 100% I don't need because it's already there. I'm just going to throw percents behind. Percent, 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 percent. See how what I counted by is helping me with these bars? All right, so now if I need to shade 40%, here it is. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is that we shaded in 40% in 2 different ways. The very first way is on the bottom with 10 parts, and we colored in 4 of them. And on the top, there were 5 parts, and we colored in 2 of them. So even though, that's not what I wanted to do, even though I did it differently, look how close my answers are. If I drew a straight line up and down, going through 40%, look at that. It's a little bit thick. I'll draw it over a little bit. There, you can see how close they are, right? I didn't grab a ruler, and it's really hard to do that with an iPad, right? But you can see that they both represent the same amount of that bar, right? So whether you make it be 4 out of 10 or 2 out of 5 parts, both of them show 40%.